Yeah, as ready as I'll be.
And we are live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Bigfoot Odyssey's Researchers Report. Our guest host for this evening, creator of one of the most diligent breakdown Bigfoot channels on YouTube called Bigfoot Tony, Mr. Jason Parsons. Somebody's volume is up. There it is. Mr. Jason Parsons, aka Bigfoot Tony. Welcome, Jason.
Hi, Gary.
And with
Sorry,
him,
there's a delay on my end.
we do have a slight
Big delay.
Yeah, I know there's a slight delay, and we do apologize for that. We're gonna try to work through that. But with him, field researcher and associate producer for the Researchers Report, Miss Daniela Agliolo.
Hello.
Welcome, Daniela. And our guest for this evening, creator and host of Beasts of Britain on YouTube. Be sure you go check that out, Mr. Andy McGrath. Welcome, Andy.
Hi, how are you all? Carrie, Daniela, Jason, lovely to be here.
Great. All right. Before we get started, just want to remind everyone in the chat, keep it clean. We do have some bulldog moderators in there that are going to be on it. So just keep the language clean. And we're going to say the last 15, 20 minutes for questions. If you have a question, make sure you post your question in all caps. That way it'll be easier for me to pick out. I do appreciate that. Obviously, super chat questions will take precedent, and we do appreciate that also. All right, without any further delay, let's get started. With no more delay than we have already.
Yeah.
Shall I start then? I'll start. Hello,
Yeah.
Andy.
I thought you were waiting for me to speak. I was like, did they say me? What's going on here?
Well, I'll start then. And well, maybe we should introduce you to everybody here, and if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in cryptozoology and how it all started.
Sure. So I'm the founder or the creator of Beasts of Britain, which is a book and a proposed TV series that I keep trying to sell, haven't sold yet. So I basically researched British cryptids. Started properly about almost 3 years ago now, when I was 40 years old in 2016. I've been, loving cryptid research since I was a teenager, so almost 28 years now, and just always kept the clippings and all the little bits and stories of different monsters around the world. And then I was working in London for many, many years, 50 hours a week. I had 2 children, and my wife said to me, "Look, you work 50 hours a week, you commute 3 hours a day. You need to do something. What about this monsters thing you're always talking about?" That's what she calls them. And I said, "Yeah, okay, maybe I'll try to do a TV series." And I talked to a friend who was a producer about that, and he said, "Well, look, you need to kind of make it into a book first, because then your idea will be protected, and then you can try to sell it on." And so I started writing blogs and immediately started interviewing on some podcasts, talking about, I'm writing this book about British cryptids, and this is my idea. And so I interviewed all the way up to it coming out, and it's been about 2 years since that happened now. And I've spoken at conferences in different parts of the world, in the US, the UK, and started becoming a field researcher. Just completed the second edition of Beasts of Britain, my book, which is going to be out next week, available on Amazon, and writing a second one, Beasts of North America, because it's a series. So that's me. That's where I am. And what I do mostly these days is tell people on podcasts about the different types of cryptids that may or may not be living in the British Isles.
Yeah, you've done a load of podcasts recently. Just go through a couple of a few of the people that I've listened to a few of them, but I can't believe how many you've done actually in such a small space of time.
Well, some of them have actually taken out restraining orders on me now to stop me calling them, asking for interviews. And I just generally say yes, because I think if you want people to know about you, you know, whether it's so I did Sasquatch Chronicles recently with Wes, which was nice. I've done a big new podcast that's coming out soon, but I can't say anything about that because I haven't released it. And then I've done some really tiny ones, and I also host my own one called Beastly Theories, which is self-described as a low-tech, low-key, low-brow podcast. It's not really a podcast. It's just me talking to guys like you that I want to sort of pick their brains, you know, and ask them about the research. I've interviewed Jeff Meldrum and Lyle and Todd and Seth Breedlove recently, and I had a really, really nice interview with Michael. So just a whole bunch of people from all around the world, and it's just been nice to pick their brains, you know. And my editing is really shady. My intros are awful, and yet, you know, it's like an exercise in nepotism because they're just guys I want to talk to, and so I know some of them well as well. So it's nice. It's nice to be able to do that and pretend it's some sort of public service. But yeah, you know, it's just it's a small community internationally, cryptozoology, you know, worldwide, but it's also a really good community. So there's people like yourselves, Jason, you know, aka Bigfoot Tony, breaking down, debunking the dross and the good stuff that comes across as Bigfoot footage on YouTube, which is a great public service to us all. You know, people like Matt Squatch and yourself out in the field, Deborah with her map, all these different guys doing great work, and it's nice to be able to talk to them and find out what they know, because normally they know something you don't. So that's one of the things I like to find out about interviews as well. Is what does the person interviewing me know, and what can I steal from them during this chat?
Yeah. Can you hear me, Andy?
I can hear you.
Oh, good. The delay is lessened.
Yeah. No, you're with us.
I realized I had like 4 other windows open of the same thing, so I closed them and reconnected. Anyway, that's not important. What I'm inspired by on your channel is how you get out and you seemingly speak to random people. I mean, I don't know if you. I mean, I'm sure you research the area, but what you just walk along and find people and then ask them have they had an encounter in the area, or how does it work with you?
No, I mean, people normally contact me actually with a sighting. Now, I don't get as many sightings as something like, say, Deborah or any of the big researchers. I've been lucky enough to have good researchers share things with me and share witnesses with me, but slowly but surely, first-time witnesses have been coming to me, and most of the locations I've gone to, it's especially for that. There was one I went to in Loch Ness in January, actually, investigating near the River Oich, which turned out to be a hoax. And I was really taken, well, all of us were really taken in by this guy, actually, and military historian, you know, #1 Amazon bestseller and all this stuff. And he just basically found a nice bit of wood near the broken down bridge in the River Oich that looked like a Nessie head and neck, and photographed it and sold it on and had us all going for a while, basically. But it seemed very viable. There'd been sightings near that area. I went up there from a Bigfoot perspective. Actually, I walked up into the Great Glen Highway into the Alt Criche, which is this big, you know, it's big pine trees and it's all hilly and it's a big long 70-mile long path. I did a short stop of it. It was about 4 hours, and it was really like spooky forest. You would have loved it, Tony, just being out there. There was a little weirdy sort of incident that got me thinking. It's probably just my mind playing tricks on me, to be honest with you. But you know, the isolation set in.
Yeah.
And it was all quiet, and I thought I saw something like a figure behind a tree from about 100 yards away. It was such a millisecond that I think it was my mind, personally. But
did you say
and
it was
then
dark?
I started.
Dark.
No, well, it wasn't dark there. No, it was because that's as I came back down the hill from overlooking the loch, and I was like taking photos of the waterfall coming down on one side. It was all mossy, so I guess it was about 45-degree angle, something like that, quite steep. And suddenly I looked up, and it just seemed like something went behind a tree. I didn't see anybody during the entire 4-hour walk because although it was a common path, it was January, there's nobody there really. And then I started hearing the crunching in the deep dark part of the forest on the way down, and there's a lot of deer up there. So
true. Good
Bigfoot
to
guy
think
goes up
about
looking for
deer
Nessie.
first.
Yeah, gets freaked out in the forest and thinks something's going on. But it was a valuable experience to me. And I know you've had a few close encounters out there in Wales yourself that have got you thinking. But for me, it was that moment when you suddenly think, if this experience happens, do I really want it? And I knew at that point I was about 2 hours from getting back down to the bottom. So I knew if I didn't want it, I got 2 hours of not wanting it to go through before I get back down. And that's something you don't really think about till you're in the moment. If you face to face suddenly with a 6 or 7 foot tall, muscular ape man, it's an animal. It's got to make a decision on what to do about you. You've got to make a decision on what to do about it. Do you really want that situation when it comes to it in the moment? And that's something I never really considered before then. But nothing happened. I came down with no Bigfoot, no Nessie, and it was a lovely time there anyway. But it was
I think
questionable.
people ask, well, what would you do in that situation if you had an encounter? To me, or generally they ask, and I think, I always say, I would be brave. You would think that you would be brave in that situation, and I would like to think that I would be able to even walk up to the the Bigfoot or whatever, but I'm sure, in the reality, it's not the same at all.
No. I would like to think the same, and Daniela, I'm sure you're the same too. But I think I would treat this, if I met one of these things, I would treat it like I'm out walking in the jungle in Africa somewhere, and I walk upon a gorilla, like a silverback. How would I behave if I walked up on a silverback? I'd be cautious. I'd be curious. I know it's probably not going to, kill me, but it could get mad. So I'm thinking, okay, don't make eye contact. Sort of, look but don't look. And the way they describe that creature doing, people who witness it often describe it sort of looking and then looking away, looking towards the witness and looking away again most of the time. So it's clearly like a code of conduct for them, or it would seem that way anyway. So I would just try to follow that and, hopefully come back down.
But of course, with gorilla, I think I remember you hearing you mention in a video that you're more along the lines of the ape theory.
Some kind
that
of
would
ape.
be different maybe for somebody like me, who thinks maybe there's a bit of like a human in them,
Yeah,
so, if you know what I mean. So
like the Neanderthal.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I don't know, but that's what I know anyway. That there's potentially some human DNA there. So maybe that's why I would feel more confident. I believe I would anyway. Feel more confident when I actually, or if I actually did see one, and to walk up to them and try to communicate. Whereas you couldn't do that with a gorilla. I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah. I personally don't know. I know that Jeff Meldrum thinks that the Almas is more like a Neanderthal-like creature, and the footprint seems to have the arch, doesn't it? And the footprints, the very few footprints that we find here, they have an arch too, don't they? So that would match what he's saying about that if the same kind of thing was here, plus descriptions.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Jason, or you, Daniela, from the descriptions you had here in the UK, but I think because of the lack of sort of Bigfoot on the brain with the witnesses, and the fact that he's what's in their mental library to describe what they've seen, so big orangutan with a flat face, bonobo chimp, like a huge gorilla with a man's face and 2 legs. I don't think we're getting accurate descriptions actually what would give us a Neanderthal feeling, or something like Gigantopithecus kind of feeling, because people don't know what they're looking at well enough to give an accurate description. They're just reaching for the closest animal they can find to describe it. Whereas Bigfoot, that's a Sasquatch. That's more of a known phenomenon. So I think the witness descriptions of that creature are much more accurate than what we have here. I read quite a few descriptions where they said it was like, an orangutan with a flat face walking, and just walked across the road and glared at the car. Its eyes reflected. And that's a strange thing, really, when you think about it. Now, it could have been a man-like ape, perhaps, but the witness hasn't had enough background information to give us that quality. So I don't know how it affects you guys, but I find it very hard to assess the British data and pull out exactly like some good correlation of what they're all seeing, and find out if it's one matching creature or several different types of creature.
Did you recently go to the Isle of Grain?
Yes, it wasn't.
To
It was close to that. Yeah, it was near the Medway, not far from the Isle of Grain.
Okay, and was that a Bigfoot encounter, witness story?
I
Or...
mean, yes, it could have been something like that. The nice chap and his wife who took me there, basically they have some horses in the field near there, and it's near a disused power plant, and it's out on the marshes. It's really, it's about a mile away from the other sightings that are listed too. And she was just feeding the horse one moment. I think it was January 21st this year. She's got 2 horses, and with the fences, there's a row of trees and tall bushes that are about 6.5, 7 feet tall, and there's a big drop to a railway line behind it, which is disused now. I think there used to be industrial trains going down there. Anyway, she sees a large figure, sort of in the stoop way, walking across, this frosty morning across the fence line. Just looks black. She can't make it out. And husband's interested in Bigfoot. She's not really into it. And sure enough, it spots her and kind of walks behind this bush, its head and shoulders above it, and then ducks down. The dog gives chase, and it's gone, basically. Now, we went up to that bush. I'm only 5'9", classic Welsh height. And Jason knows we're not at all people, and she's standing at the bush. She's about 5'10", 5'11", and the bush is at least 6.5 feet tall. So for the figure's head and shoulders to be above it, I think is quite significant. No footprints, frozen ground. But that's not the only sighting in that way, as Daniela probably knows. Now, this Medway area, the River Medway connects to the Thames, and there's an estuary that goes out from it. This whole area is like flat marsh. There's forest and there's cattle, but there's hardly any people anywhere. So there's been quite a few sightings. There's the Isle of Grain Sasquatch that you just mentioned, Daniela, which was seen at a farmhouse several times. I was taken to that farmhouse during this recent trip. The lady who saw the creature no longer lives there, but I was shown the property, and it's just one big house in the middle of rivers and marshes and totally inaccessible countryside, basically. Lots of boggy areas you can get trapped in. And she'd seen it leaning over a big van there and banging on the door and shaking a caravan and all kinds of things. I think there'd also been a sighting in Cooling, Kent, nearby. I think some boys saw a creature running along some hay rails early one morning, and it caught sight of them and it sped off across the hay rails and headed for the woods. And there's just tons of sightings like that. When you go to the area, it's really desolate. It's really open. There would be lots of food, loads of fish stocks and crustaceans and deer and sheep and all kinds of small mammals and things like that too. There's bird sanctuaries along there, so it would be a great place to get some food.
Yeah,
and
sounds like the
lots of
perfect
water.
place.
Yeah, really, really. I mean, we're going to spend a night there at some point when he's got some time. One of the properties, and he's been very good. He's put a few sand traps out along this fence line that the creature walked behind each tree. He's put some nice deep sand behind each one. So he's been checking that just to see if something walks past. It'll be a great medium to get a footprint in.
Yeah. Do you think the Bigfoot in the UK. And I know we don't have as many sightings, obviously, and encounters as the US. Obviously, the size of the US, the United States, obviously,
Yeah.
that's one um, reason, I guess, for that. But I was thinking one reason people say that there can't be Bigfoot in the UK is because there's no food,
Yeah.
Um, but
That's
you just
funny.
mentioned crustaceans and things like that,
Yeah.
and there's so much food that we know about. But imagine the food
Oh yeah.
sources that they know about. I mean, the woodwose and the Bigfoot.
And
And that
it's
they
not
know
just
how
that.
to get
Yeah.
it.
Sorry
Yeah,
to interrupt you there.
that's
It's
right.
not just that. Actually, I don't know if you ever saw this blog that I wrote about that. Actually, it was called "What's with the Habitude," and
Yeah.
anyway, there was like a bunch of stats in there on how little urban sprawl there is in the UK for a start,
Mm,
and what kind of food there is, and how much land there is to roam about in, and yeah, it was really surprising to me um, when I found this out, when I looked and saw the figures, and it was actually
mm,
done by a government body, by DEFRA, by the National Ecosystem
mm,
Assessment. So there was a government body that did this research. So I
yeah.
mean, it's in their interest. So it's the UK National Ecosystem Assessment, and they discovered that only 6.8% of the UK's entire land area can be classified as urban, and that includes rural developments and roads.
Yeah.
And when you get to places like Scotland, for example, only 1.9% of the entire country is urban.
Yeah.
It's absolutely huge, and you've got 1.5 million deer, 4,500 wild boar. Then you've got 62,000 pairs of this Canada geese and 192,000 coming in every winter.
Yeah.
And the berries and the fish and all the other mammals. And, look at Wales, where we're from, 10 million sheep, right? 30 million sheep in the entire country, 10 million just in Wales with a population of 3 million people,
Yeah.
or 3.5 or whatever it is now. I mean, it's really, I think it's a silly argument. If you live in London like I do, or you live in Cardiff or Manchester or something like that, you could be
Mm,
forgiven for thinking it's all city everywhere.
yeah.
But it's just not.
Well, even in the cities, I mean, I think I saw one of your videos where you were talking about the green corridor, right?
Mm,
Um, and that's really true. I mean, particularly, I mean, especially Bigfoot or Sasquatch type creatures, where they've been elusive for so many thousands of years already.
mm.
That and well, they have no choice but to hide. Well, I mean, if they know really what humans are like, and what they're capable of. I mean, I think anyway that they have this maybe this ability or um, to know and to be aware of what humans are like, if you know what I mean. What do you think that's
Yeah.
possible?
Yeah, that's another thing. That's a really good point, actually, Jason, because we judge all the stipulations and the conditions for there being a Bigfoot-like creature in the UK. We base upon the North American Sasquatch or the Almas in Siberia, which in Russia, which we know much less about anyway,
Hmm.
or even the Yowie in Australia, where there's masses of space. Instead of thinking, well, if these depictions and these carvings and tapestries of the woodwoes, these hairy wild men of the woods on our medieval churches and in our our holy buildings and on our regal
Hmm.
emblems, if they're to be believed, then this creature's been living with us for thousands of years, and if that's the case, then surely it would be adapted to us. And now more than ever before, we're not in the countries we used to be. So there's more space than there ever would have been in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah.
The forest, they're saying, is growing rapidly, like badgers and even pine martens increasing,
Hmm.
exponentially. This is a really rare creature, it's spreading out and out and out. So, as well as the all of the out of place animals we have that have come to live here over the years, like wallabies and whatnot, wild
Hmm.
boar have returned. And have you seen a wild boar? I haven't seen a wild boar. I saw
I
a
have.
deer that.
I went
Oh, have
to
you?
Forest of Dean.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah,
Looking for sign,
yeah.
and I went through a bush, as you do. You go off the
Hmm.
track. There's no
Yeah.
point staying on the track, obviously, especially in the UK.
No, that's right.
So I went through these bushes, and there in front of me was just this giant, like female or male, I don't know,
Huge.
and
Yeah.
baby piglets and everything.
Oh
At that
goodness.
time, I didn't really know the severity of the situation, but I know they
Yeah.
are quite dangerous.
With piglets, you're in
So,
real trouble,
yeah,
basically. Yeah.
I just slowly backed off and
Yeah.
survived.
You're lucky. I mean, I have been, run at by a deer once or twice. The main one was in Richmond Park, but I was walking through during the rutting season, and that was really silly of me to do that. And I know when it is, I just went for a walk and forgot all about it.
Yeah,
It didn't follow through. It just kind of charged a bit and then broke off.
like a
But the
bluff
one you
bluff
saw in the
charge.
video that like a bluff shows that I posted recently, that was in Weybridge. I was just up there seeing a friend. I knew that it's like all these places around the UK. You've got a little town, then some motorways and roads or A roads, and a bunch of forest all the way along and fields to the next town. And
Yeah,
that's obviously how it came in. But the bit of wood that I filmed it in was about, it wasn't even quarter of a mile. It was tiny.
yeah,
It was really
yeah.
tiny, and it would have had to come through a bit of town. There was a sighting recently. I'll have to find it, bring it up. A guy gave to me of a big cat, puma. It was actually a few years back, but he's in Findon in Northamptonshire, and he saw this puma in his back garden a few years
Puma.
back. A puma,
Yeah,
yeah,
you mean so a
like
panther
a
is black,
mountain
right?
lion. Yeah, panther is black, so like the
Puma
tawny
is
coloured
mountain
ones,
lion.
it's slightly like a mountain lion,
It's quite unusual.
and it
Usually
is
black.
that is true. But the second most common type is the puma. Next to
Right.
that,
Okay.
so I guess they were also popular pets then. Anyway, he'd come out, and his back garden it's like a patioed back garden. It's not lots of plants and trees and things. He was taking the washing in. It was hiding behind his black bins at the back.
Right.
And fair enough, the town was surrounded by lots of countryside, but it would have had to come through. It was really concreted, the section he was in. It would have had to come right through the center of town, down his back alleyway, which is used by the neighbors frequently with the bins, and got into
Yeah.
his garden, whatever it was looking for, scraps or scavenging, mice, rats, whatever. And yet, it got all the way there without being seen. And he only caught it accidentally. And he said this thing took 2 leaps across the garden. It was over the fence into the
Wow.
neighbor's garden. It was away. And that's it. And he didn't go out with like a big knife the next couple of nights. And I get stories like that all the time. That's my most frequent thing, actually. These big cats constantly all over the place, countrywide. And that's when I'm out there looking for the Yeti, as my daughters call it. Daddy's going looking for the Yeti. The one thing I'm thinking about is not, oh no, what happens if I really meet a Bigfoot? I think that's from experience of other people. That doesn't seem to be a life-changing experience. I'm thinking, what if I run up on a big cat accidentally or catch it unawares?
Yeah.
What's the situation going to be? I know they often run away too, but that's one of the reasons I stopped going out at night by myself. It's because I just thought you're kind of pushing the barrier. You're all alone. You're by yourself, and maybe you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Do you have
scary.
any
I think I had a. Sorry, Jason. I thought I had a little encounter I told you about, Andy, didn't I?
Yeah.
Walking down the lane that night and something walking alongside me, parallel with me in a field, and all I could
Growling?
hear was the growling. Yeah,
Yes.
really,
Yes.
really deep. And what puzzled me is why it was following, and when I was just walking away from it, and why it was stalking me. I don't know. It kind of felt like that.
I wonder about cubs though, Daniela, and things like that, or just that when you were
Right.
on its patch, and it wanted you gone, because obviously these animals, they're ambush attackers, aren't they? They don't stalk you, growling at you if they want to get you. They want you to move away when they're doing that.
That's yeah. But I will never. I've never heard anything like that from cows or sheep or
Where was that exactly again?
no, in Lancaster, up where I'm at in northwest.
Yeah.
And near a railway line as well. And I know, there's these, I think, estuaries, railway lines where there's kill. Any sort of kill is a good spot for any animal to feed. And I did actually, I remember I went back home that night and I did a little bit of research, and there was at that point a guy doing accounts. I think it was called like the Big UK Cat or something like that. And 3 days earlier, a train driver from Preston had reported seeing something large walking across the railway lines, very, very close, like 16 miles away from where I am. So, I do believe that, and I walk a lot at night actually with my dogs. I used to do a lot more than what I do now. But since that night, that changed things a little bit for me. Where I thought I don't ever want to be somewhere. I'll just have no chance. You just know you're just
No,
not
I
going to
know.
get.
I mean, the great thing
Not going to
about
get home.
wild animals mostly is that we're not their prey. They don't want to be around us. And that's, even bears and things, and I'm terrified of bears. Now, it's silly for me to be terrified of bears because I'm not going to meet one here, probably. But, I think it further and further afield. When we were at Lake Champlain, I was there with a researcher last year, and we went and did a few night investigations at Arnold's Bay because that's where the monster had been seen a lot, Lake Monster, Champ, and we sort of got right down to the edge of the bay, and it was completely black, and she had a night scope and whatever. But I was thinking, there's black bears here. It's New England, Vermont. Sorry, it's Vermont. So, there's black bear. What the hell am I doing down on the shore here? And every noise I heard, it wasn't, is that champ? Is that champ? For me, in my mind, it was, is that a black bear? Is that a black bear? Thinking about, and I know they're not that aggressive, or they're not said to be that aggressive, but for me, that's the end. I'm not going to be able to hold my own. I don't feel like I have the same negotiating rights with the black bear as I do, or brown bears, but grizzly, especially as I do with Bigfoot or something else, right?
Yeah, you've no chance, have you? There's no.
You can't outrun it. They can run. They can climb. They can swim. What you gonna do?
I think they'll just wipe you out before you've even a chance to think about it.
Basically, you gotta outbeef them, haven't you? My friends say just get your arms up nice and big, and
Yeah.
Definitely worth a shot. Yeah.
Nessie.
Go on, Jason.
Yeah, Nessie really interests me. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Loch Ness, Loch Ness monster.
Yeah.
Really, since I was a child, really, and up until now, still. What is it? What is it? Do you think that captures the imagination about with Nessie? I mean, for me anyway, I feel somehow there's I'm trying to remember what I wrote down here. Hang on a second. Feel a deep connection that somehow I know in my heart that she is real. I say she. I think of Nessie as a she. Similar with Sasquatch. That you wouldn't feel with possibly other cryptids. I know other cryptids. I know of other cryptids, and I don't feel kind of a deep connection with them as I do with Loch Ness type creatures, particularly Loch Ness monster, obviously in Scotland. Do you feel that way, or do you
I
feel a
do.
deep
I mean,
connection with Loch
yeah.
Ness monster?
Well, I've been there 3 times now, and I actually never went there until 2012.
Oh gosh.
Which was strange. And me and my wife got married in 2010, and we didn't have any money, so we couldn't have a honeymoon. And she was nice enough in 2012 to allow us to have a honeymoon at Loch Ness.
Oh, wow.
But her attitude, and I say this on the interviews all the time, but I keep repeating it because it's funny. I think guide to a happy marriage is to be honest about what you don't like that the other person's interested
Yeah.
in. So I would say to her, they're real, they're really real. And she says, Andy, listen, I know they're real, but I don't care.
Straight to
Which
the
is
point.
straight to the point. I mean, she basically said, "I'm happy for you to have this. This is your thing," you know. And anyway, I went to Loch Ness with these big hopes. And 2 years after I was at the Loch Ness Lodge, this like lovely 5-star hotel that we stayed in, like Nessie hunting in style for the honeymoon. It was seen from the dining room window by 9 guests swimming around for about 10 minutes or something. This big hump. I was gutted. 2 years too early.
Okay. I thought it was when
And
you were there, not when you were there.
no, it wasn't. And it was 2 years later. And you know, since I keep up with the Loch Ness sightings, I keep up with the Loch Ness sightings registered run by Gary Campbell and other great researchers, like real Loch Ness researchers like Roland Watson, and Scott Modis, and these other people. I keep abreast of it, but the whole area, I've been there 3 times now. It's like, you know, Kerry might get this. It's like a cryptozoological Coney Island, right? It's kind of rusty and worn down, and it's something from a bygone era that's kind of slipped out of popularity, you know, in a real time sense. Not like Bigfoot and these other things that are coming up, Mothman, Dogman. And it's a beautiful area. You know, most of the A road on the one side, on the I think they call it the north side, you know, doesn't even go along the entirety of the loch. It's blocked out by lots of trees. There's lots of bits where it goes away from the loch. On the other side, the south side, you know, it goes into the hills for the most of the time. So it's heavily forested. So it's easy to imagine that something could be slipping in and out and not be seen. 750 feet deep in some places, thousands of sightings. And yet, when you get there and you see the water, and you see how much, you know, history of hoax there is around the place, it's just, there's definitely something there. People are definitely seeing something, but it's just, you know, they're not pure sightings because there's too much media attention. There's too much gain for people, small time gain, like, you know, a couple of £100 for the newspaper for some picture or something like that. For it to be genuine all the time. I think there are creatures there. I don't think they're there all the time, personally. I think they go into the other lochs like Loch Lochy, Loch Garry, Loch Oich, all the ones that connect at the bottom there and make their way out to sea at some point too, although that's not an easy journey. And other places like Loch Morar.
Sorry, why they
No,
would
just
visit, come back and return to the loch?
It could be for breeding. I personally think if they do move in and out between the lochs, if that's the case, and they are seen around the coast as well a lot, you know, around the Beauly Firth on the other side, and the Beauly Firth and the Moray Firth on the other side, they have been seen around all of these places, and in some of the other adjacent sea lochs, similar looking creatures. I think it might be just for food. Maybe they're following salmon migrations or eels coming back in, you know, from the Sargasso Sea. They have been seen eating eels and trout in various locations. So definitely some kind of fish eater. Could be following animals in and out. I just don't think there's enough regular sightings for it to be located there all the time. And although if it is located there all the time, there's one theory that I do like, and Scott told me about, which was cloacal respiration. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
It's nicknamed. It's named after some turtles that do this. One is the Mary River turtle in Australia, and these cloacal bursae are in the sort of anal orifice of the turtle, and there's these sacs that basically exchange that draw oxygen out of the water, and this turtle can stay down underwater for 3 days.
Oh wow!
And it's nicknamed the butt breathing turtle, right? So this butt breathing, you know, it's a great get out of jail free card. Let's face it. But this butt breathing turtle, you know, does, at least perhaps as another reptile, give us some possible plausibility as to why they might not be seen a lot. I do admit that, you know, it's just a thrown out there theory. We don't know.
A bit of a stretch, maybe.
Yeah, a bit of a stretch, but it would make some answers. I personally think they come in and out. They've been seen around the coast. They've been seen in lots of other lochs. 31,460 lochs and lochans in Scotland, remember? Tons. And all the sea around. So, yeah, plenty of room. But Loch Ness itself, I kind of love it and hate it all at once. The location.
Well, I've got a question for you, Andy.
Yeah.
Aside from Loch Ness, Mothman, Bigfoot, things like that, what are the more common cryptid reports you get around the UK or in that area?
I mean, lake monsters and Bigfoot reports are the most common cryptid reports for sure. There are some dogman reports or werewolf reports, modern ones. There are also some of what we term little people or Littlefoot. So there's a little bit in my book. It's called The Little People or the Hairy Fairy Folk. Where I try to sort of justify some of the sparse little people or troll-like sightings in the UK. And match them with things like the Hulder folk in Iceland or the Junjadi in Australia as a type of Littlefoot, or you'd have what they're like the Bookwis or Pukwudgie, is that right, Kerry?
Yeah.
Something like that. Maybe these are another form, or maybe our old fairy stories are, our superstitious ancestors trying to describe these diminutive primates of some kind that they may have been witnessing. Or again, a diminutive race of people, perhaps.
That's kind of what I wonder about here. We have this incredible species here, and we know it exists. It's been seen thousands of times, but the different sizes. You get reports of someone sees a small one and they call it a juvenile. Well, we can't know for sure that is what that is. That's a juvenile. I mean, what if it's a full-grown adult, something else? So that's what I think. I think a good mixture is put in there.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. One of the things that does stand out actually. So I'll try and find this side of you actually. Now, this was in early 2018. I think it might have been New Year's Day, and this was in a place called Errington Woods. Now, what's really interesting to me about this, and it's one of the drawings that's featured on my Beast of Britain map, actually by Brett Menning, really great artist, did that for me. Sorry, plug. Now, basically, there was a dog walker in these woods, Errington Woods, New Year's Day, January 2018, and referring to the point you just made about juveniles or fully grown individuals of a short height, Kerry, and she saw these two hairy human-type figures in Errington Woods, and it's a new mosque, this village, and she was walking the dogs and she heard chattering noises, sounded like two men muttering, almost ape-like. She looks into the trees, the direction the sounds are coming from, sees these two creatures stood near a felled tree, about 3 feet tall, covered in tawny coloured hair, both males. She saw the anatomy of one and said they looked like small primitive humans. One was wearing what I can only assume was a loincloth. Each had a mane of hair down their necks, very muscular. She got the impression they weren't children, but they were fully grown adults, just two little men covered in golden hair. And the dogs started barking, and they ran off, these guys and these little creatures. But that's something that would definitely put into the little people camp, or the Littlefoot camp in a way, and not the juvenile Bigfoot camp. And we do have Bigfoot sightings here that are sort of 4.5, 5 feet. But generally, the descriptions people give, somebody like Mark Farnell, for instance, Jason, appeared in Christopher Turner's Elusive documentary with you. They're talking about, a Bigfoot-like creature in stature, but of a shorter height, possibly a juvenile.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
I think generally the Bigfoot encounters in the UK are generally the size of the Bigfoots anyway are shorter generally reported than compared to the US anyway. That's just, I think.
You've noticed that too, sort of 5 to 7 feet, somewhere around that mark usually.
Yeah, when you obviously in the US you're talking 8, 10 foot, maybe more sometimes. Yeah.
The further south you go, it seems like the smaller they get. I mean, we still get the reports of the 8, 9 footer down south, but you get up in the mountains, Pacific Northwest, that's when you're talking 10, 11, 12 footer. Sure. And I mean, that's also subjective. You're talking to someone that's probably seeing this thing from a distance, could be an 8 footer and they're just, mistaken. But also get the ones that go back and measure I just talked to a guy from when we did the rest watching. He actually made a device, went back, and where he saw the shoulder was at 8 foot. So you figure, 9 footer. What I thought was interesting about what you said earlier, Andy, was the loincloth. Now, that's
That's a
self-awareness.
whole different, that's a whole different kettle of fish. And that's why I wonder, are we looking at something then that's like a form of little person of some kind, some relic or some little person? Because there are other sightings that don't describe that type of appearance, that are more troll-like, for want of a better word. Again, around about the same height. But the sightings, I mean, I wrote a whole chapter on it, and the sightings, they were hard to dig up. There weren't a lot of modern sightings. And my book, Piece of Britain, only deals with modern sightings, because I think once you get into the, over 100, over 120 years ago, we're talking about folklore now, myth and legend, and it's hard to really establish that as some sort of fact. Whereas you still have a living witness that can be contacted, or who's been able to come forward and say, I saw this thing and I don't know what it was. Then that validates at least the claim that somebody saw something.
Yeah,
absolutely. We did have a couple of questions from the chat. Matthew Turner asked, what's the involvement? Is the government have any kind of involvement with the Bigfoot there, or do they just like it is here? They just deny it.
Well, no, they don't even. It's not even at that stage. I mean, I don't know what you think about this, Daniela and Jason, but from my information, even within the cryptozoology community here, it's a taboo. It's everybody from the established community says it's a supernatural creature, simply because of the things Jason talked about earlier, that there isn't the habitat. There allegedly isn't the habitat and foodstuffs available for them. And yet we've got hundreds of these big cats wandering around the place doing just fine, staying out of sight.
I don't know that whole food argument. I've heard that before, and there were 8 million Native Americans made it just fine before we ever got
on
to
corn,
the United States.
right?
exactly.
Right. I mean, plus we don't know what their metabolism is. We don't know what all they can process. I mean, that metabolism question is important to me because look at a crocodile or an alligator. I give them, they're cold blooded, but once a month, and we're talking about a 2,000-pound animal.
Exactly.
They can eat once a month and good to go. So plus, you have conservation of energy. These things probably just sit around a lot all the time. Maybe they just move around at night. I think they sit around, a lot. But we had another question, and I lost it. Make sure you got your questions in caps, everybody. Okay, here we go. Jamie Harms asked, has anyone seen Cannibal in the Jungle? It's about the jungle people.
No.
Okay.
I haven't seen that. I can't watch anything with the word cannibal in the title. I've got a memory that does not forget. I cannot unsee what has been seen, basically. So I'm very careful about what I watch.
Okay.
No doubt.
No.
Let's see. Marcia.
I did have one.
Go ahead, Danielle.
I just wanted to ask Andy about you're writing a book now about cryptids in North America.
Yeah, just started.
So, are you seeing anything different to cryptids that are in the UK in America?
Well, things like Mothman, I guess that would be a big thing. The lizard man, which is, I know there's only a few sightings of that. Loveland frog and all the classics. Those kind of guys would be quite different. I have tried to equate Mothman to the Owlman now and again, thinking, we don't quite describe it as not having a head. It's just hard to make it out. And we do have a sighting. One off sighting is something called the Bat Beast of Kent here, which was seen in the 60s, I believe. I don't have the sighting in front of me. By essentially by a bunch of friends walking home one night. I've got the sighting here. I'll just get that, make sure I've got. There you go. One evening in November 1963, 4 teenage friends walking home from a party in the county of Kent when they saw a mysterious flickering light descend into a nearby field in Sandling Park, make its way into some trees. At the park, the teens noticed a rustling in the brush, shocked when a figure emerged and walked towards them looking like a bipedal headless bat, completely black and around 5 feet tall, with big webbed feet, wings on its back. One of the witnesses was convinced it didn't have a head. So there's things like that, or the Owl Man of Morning, which there's a lot of sort of Tony Doc Shields mixed up into that sighting. So I'm not sure about that one, but it does seem to have a lot of Mothman-like attributes, to glowing red eyes and things like that. So pterosaurs, there are some pterosaur sightings here, a few, which are very clearly pterosaur sightings, and of course there's many pterosaur sightings in the US, including in your neck of the woods, Kerry, in Texas too, I hear.
Yeah, I heard that. What's the name of the book you have out now, Randy?
It's called Beasts of Britain. The if you're going to buy it on Amazon, the second edition will be out by next Wednesday on Amazon. It will be cheaper and have much more in it, more pictures, more chapters, less spelling mistakes.
All right.
Yeah, and get it there. I'd be very happy for you to grab yourself a copy.
Yeah, absolutely. Linda's the big reader. I used to read a whole lot, and since I started reading 100 emails a day, I just kind of gave it up. But we have a question here. Back to the Bigfoot. Miss Marsha Patterson asked, back to the Bigfoot. Do you think they bury their own, like some think?
Is that for me? I think it's very possible that they do, especially in the British countryside. There are scavengers, but unlike the US, there aren't lots of large scavengers that would come in and be able to get rid of a body like that. Have to remember as well, in the UK, there's lots of cave systems that are uncharted, tons of abandoned mines. In fact, there's now a new trend of people going into them. I've seen some footage recently all over the place, and investigating mines that have been closed since the 1800s and before. So these things are all over the place, as well as tunnel systems. So perhaps it's possible that they go away somewhere quiet to die. Lots of animals do that. Burying, I think, yeah, perhaps, but I don't know how we would establish that.
Well, I've always been of the mind that what we're dealing with here is a sentient being, self-aware, intelligent, that is predisposed to hiding, even in the dark. They want to stay hidden. They don't want to be found out. Why would they leave one of their dead around for us to find?
Yeah,
that makes sense to me. Yeah, it makes sense to me. What do you think, Jason?
Well, I agree with you. I think they do. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I think they may bury dead. I had a theory. The trapdoor spider.
Yeah.
Where they like the ground is almost like looks normal. But I'm wondering maybe if Bigfoot, or Woodwose, or Sasquatch even have that level of intelligence to create like a trapdoor situation where
like a little blind,
like kind of a door,
on
the ground, where you wouldn't know if you walked across it, you wouldn't know that it was actually a door, and it's kind of a silly thing, but just a thought,
Yeah, well, why not? I mean, the birds with their tiny brains can build complex and intricate nests, right?
Yeah. Many animals have this kind of ability.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think I think I'm with Carrie and you on this whole thing, that whatever this thing is, if it's real, I only say if because to give that side of it a chance to, if it's real, it's definitely intelligent. There's no way it could stay hidden in almost all the sightings here. And Daniela, I don't know if you'll corroborate this, and Jason too. All of the sightings here are the same as the US ones. Somebody's driving their car and suddenly it's on the road, or somebody's walking their dog and suddenly there's very few curious interactions. There are some, but where the creatures come in to have a look, but generally it's being caught unaware. And it seems to be the same in Australia. If you look at the Yowie, look at the Sasquatch, it's been caught unaware. Didn't know you were there. You caught it out, and the sighting's a couple of seconds usually, and then it's done. So these creatures, like you say, Gary, they want to be hidden, and if they are here in the UK, then they're doing a damn good job of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, another thing that I kind of look at is think about what it takes to make a fossil. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
Something usually left on top of the ground is not going to make a fossil. I look at all these hominoid skulls, these really thick, heavy, brow-ridged skulls, and they find so many of them. They had to be buried, and they'll find the complete, like the Lake Turkana, you know, the complete skeletons. They find them, you know, accidentally covered up completely by a mudslide. I mean, come on. I just don't buy those things. So I don't believe that's us. That's just my belief. I don't believe that's where we come from. I believe that is them. People say there's no type specimen for Sasquatch, and I'll say we've been digging them out of the ground for the last 200 years. And that's just how I feel about it.
Well, I think the religious perspective is an important one on this because, of course, you know, many of us have that ideology. Now, for me personally, I've been criticized once or twice in the past for being an admitted creationist. But I always point out to people, you know, this isn't part of my research into cryptozoology. Well, it's not. It is a part of it, obviously, because I believe it, but it's not the purpose of my research into it. I'm actually looking to discover unknown animals, things that haven't been seen before. And the hardest thing for me, Kerry, you might have this too, is to leave those ideas at the door when I'm looking at the evidence. Because, yeah, I interviewed, Kent Hovind recently, and also, what is his name? He went to Ica in Peru to look at the Ica stones. Dennis Swift, and some other people, and they were, they're creationists, cryptozoologists essentially, and they're looking for living dinosaurs and things like this. And I just wanted to get their perspective because I thought, I've interviewed or talked with people in cryptozoology that believe in psychic Bigfoot and paranormal this and woo that and spiritual this, or materialist and the theory of evolution. And why are we leaving these guys out, just the creationists? Why can't we just we're all looking for the same kinds of things, we've just got a different perspective or worldview on why they might be there. So I think it's good to be open about it, but also to be to say, okay, let's look at what we have and come to some sort of conclusion about that.
Well, the way we see it, we keep an open mind. We try to take it as far as we can with the naturalistic approach until we run into that thing that just can't be explained. And we've had quite a few of those. I'm sure I get a lot of photos, a lot of images. Jason is he actually is going to be doing some work with us, doing our video analysis, and I've all these pictures I got to send to you, Jason. There, some of them are kind of disappointing, but I always have someone else have a look at it. But no, that's how we see it. We can't discount anything. I mean, how can anybody, especially with all the reports? But we're going to take one more question, and then we're going to bring it on home. This question was from Nancy. Are the UK Sasquatch, do you think they're more aggressive, less aggressive? What do you think?
Less. There's been a few bluff charge type situations in the past. One of which was not far from an actual Bigfoot sighting here in Surrey at Box Hill. That was sighting in 2012, and that was just a Bigfoot had come to watch a jogger who'd sat down on these big steep steps at ascend the hill after she'd finished her jog one summer evening. But not far from there, there's these old disused World War II railway tunnels in a place called Dorking. And these new explorers, they go into these tunnels. They were there one night ready to go in with their dog, and they heard somebody inside. So they thought, well, let's just wait it out, let them come out first, and then we'll go in. And then they heard this almighty ruckus in the trees facing them, breaking of twigs and roaring and snapping twigs and stomping and pounding. We don't have any kind of animal here that can make that kind of effect on the environment. And then this quietness and this sort of thudding around. They allegedly found a large footprint the next day, which they photographed but didn't cast because nobody casts here really. We're not prepared for it. And so there's things like that. But generally speaking, no, they're caught accidentally on the road, or when they've curiously sort of observed people, it's been in that kind of peekaboo Bigfoot kind of way. As far as I'm concerned, Jason might think something different, and Daniela too, but the reports I've looked at seem to reflect curious but evasive animal.
Excellent. Well, that's our hour, everybody. We certainly do appreciate Andy McGrath for joining us here tonight.
Thank
We
you all.
really appreciate
Thank
you
you.
guys.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Jason,
Andy.
Daniela.
Appreciate everybody watching for bearing with us while we grab our bearings. Thank you, Bigfoot Tony, Jason Parsons here with us tonight. Thank you, Daniela Agliolo, our associate producer for the show. She carries many crowns, and we certainly do appreciate all the work she does. Be sure you check out Andy's book, Beast of Britain. You can find that on Amazon. Be sure you check out his YouTube channel, Beast of Britain. Be sure you check out Bigfoot Tony on YouTube. Be sure you check out Bigfoot Odyssey on YouTube. We don't have a book just yet, but I don't have time. I don't have time to write 10 sentences, so no big deal. All right, next show.
Don't forget the Facebook group.
Yeah. Don't forget, join Bigfoot Odyssey Facebook group. The big boss lady is here herself, and she and Jason do an excellent job in there, and we certainly appreciate that. Next show is going to be Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central. Scott Owen's going to be our guest host, and we will have eyewitness Sean Wilson on. And right after that, on What the Paranormal YouTube channel, our good friend Tex 2517 will be doing an interview there. So we'll remind you guys of that again. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight, and y'all take care.
Thank you. Good night.